One of my first Jordan Peterson videos is now 10 years old. 10 years ago, I critiqued Jordan Peterson on classical liberalism. When I put that video up, that video was massively downvoted. Remember back when YouTube would allow you to see the thumbs down? Okay, so 9 years ago.
Dyer.
So this is me back when I was carb bloated. I think this is right when I quit drinking, or right after I quit drinking alcohol. So I would soon debloat, don't worry. But this video was massively downvoted back in the day. Almost all the comments were negative because at that time, everyone was so enamored with Jordan Peterson's representation of classical liberalism. And I always spoke positively of the aspects of Jordan Peterson that I liked and appreciated. And my, how things have changed, because who ended up being correct in this whole thing? Me. I was correct. And over time, by the way, the stats on this video have completely flipped. They're now way in the positive, 2,500 likes, 70,000 views, which for my channel is good. But you'll notice that all the stuff that I'm saying today, it's no different than what I said in this video almost 10 years ago. Critiquing classical liberalism from the same vantage point. Now, unfortunately, it's taken 10 years to begin to move the Overton window for people to understand, dude, it's not just the uniparty, okay? I learned about the uniparty problem when I was reading Ron Paul and all that stuff in the 2000s, okay? Problem, unfortunately, which is a hard pill for everybody to swallow on 4th of July, is Americanism itself is part of the Enlightenment dialectic. But there's good points in America. Yeah, that's why it's a dialectic. That's why it works. They wouldn't use dialectics if it didn't work. So the point is not, are there any good principles in America's founding documents? Of course. And that's because America's founding documents and ideology don't come from one single source. There's a host of sources. There's Machiavelli. There's the Italian Republic had a huge influence on America in the founding documents. There's John Locke's philosophy, which has good and bad. In fact, the first phrase of Declaration of Independence is literally just bastardized from John Locke. There's common law, Roman common law, European common law is part. My hair is driving me crazy. I can't get the swoop to do right. There is biblical law that's an influence on American founding. So I usually say, look, best case scenario, steel manning it, America is half Christian. That's my assessment. From its very founding ethos, it's about half Christian in its principles and ideas, at best, okay? Oh, well, there we go. That's good. No, it's not good enough. Because when we say one nation under God, what God? Satan? Yakub? Who's the God? The ethos of America is, whether we like it or not, to not specify the deity. Well, that's how we all get along. Yeah, but we can't all get along. I don't share the same paradigm as a Yacubian Nation of Islam guy when he thinks his deity is Yakub. If a Scientologist says they believe in one God, which is some generic mind, that's what they kind of believe. That doesn't mean I have the same worldview as a Scientologist because they, quote, believe in one God. It's amazing to me how obvious this is, and yet we still have all of the talking heads, all of the, people, Trent Horn, they all want to defend the idea of generic theism. It's absolutely worthless as an idea. And it's not just the Freemasons that came up with it. Classical theism that precedes the Masons were already teaching generic theism. That is classical theism. If you look up Dr. Ed Fazer's definition of classical theism, he says classical theism is the deity of Plotinus, Aristotle, Avicenna, Mohammed, the Jews, and Jesus. No, that's not the same God. Muslims say God is not a father. Jesus says God is my father. So right there, an obvious disqualifier. They're not the same. They cannot be the same referent because they explicitly deny essential attributes that signify the referent. It's like This is so basic. It's very bizarre. And it's really because we've all been raised in Americanism. We've grown up with the idea, well, bro, we're one nation under God. It says it on our fiat dollar bill with all seeing eye on it, which was put on there by a bunch of weird creep masons like Henry Wallace and socialists. Yeah, do you think Henry Wallace, with his weird theosophy views, do you think he has the same view as you as a Christian? Had a Orthodox priest under the EP the other day wrote a page of criticism of me over this issue. Jay Dyer can move to Russia because he believes that the great wonderful benefits of the Enlightenment are bad. Well, I'm being very precise about the aspects that were good and bad. And by the way, modern Russia has all the same Enlightenment ideas. What are you talking about? When did I say that Russia was the solution to? I never even said that. They just assume all these things about me. And it's no different than when I critiqued Jordan Peterson 10 years ago. You just hate Jordan Peterson because you're jealous. You blah, 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 blah. It's all about me. It's like, well, did you listen to any of the arguments I made? Because the point in this video was to say, and here's the key point I want to get to modern America to bring it up to speed. The key point was to say, look, the same presuppositions of classical liberal Enlightenment equalitarianism, which I know the Enlightenment philosophers and thinkers didn't believe in actual equalitarianism. This is the part where it's crazy. But the problem is that when you have that ambiguous language of all men are created equal, it leads to the stages. It leads to the stages of ontological equality. Well, if I'm equal to everyone else and everything is purely equalized and all men are equal, then there's nothing that says I can't be something else. And if I'm an atomized individual, which was the whole Enlightenment philosophy's ethos, then as an atomized individual, I can individualize myself to be even what I wasn't yesterday. Why am I bound by what I was as a young man, as a male? Why am I bound by society or my family's programming that I have to be a dude, you see? And I've always thought that one of the key reasons why people keep getting forced into not admitting that is because as soon as you admit that there's something ontological about being a male, for example, that also means there's something ontological about your heritage. That means that you don't just come out of a blob of Gumby people goo that you're formed into something that you can just reform into a new thing. It means, you're a white dude. I'm not talking about me because I'm BIPOC, but I'm saying for most of y'all out there in this audience. In other words, it would force these people to admit the reality of ethnicity, which they can't admit. And they can't admit that because a lot of these people are so stupid. They're low tier, they're low IQ. They think that if you admit that ethnicity or race exists, that must then mean that you are saying that's the most important quality and you now hate all the other people. But that's all brainwashing. Because no Chinese person thinks that because they believe and know that they're Chinese, that therefore means they must therefore hate all of the other people. It doesn't logically follow, right? But everyone is so deathly afraid of the new civic sins of, quote, racism, or the civic sin of non-equalitarianism in whatever form. Thank you. That they're deathly afraid of offending against the religion of democracy and equalitarianism. Now, I don't agree with all of the new right thinkers in Europe, but many of the new right thinkers in Europe have written very significant critiques of this idea of the logical process of the illogic of the Enlightenment, going from universalized rights to then denying identity to then you being able to, like a consumer, choose and buy your identity. Oh, I'll just add a plastic ding dong and I become a woman. I mean, a man from a woman or whatever. I'll cut it off and now I become that. I've paid the plastic surgeon and now I am the other identity because I purchased it like a consumer product. As if you can't literally, you're grounded in the family, the time, the nation that you're born into. But unfortunately, America's Enlightenment ethos has invented the idea that a nation state or an ethnos can be replaced with propositional affirmations. Now, in the Byzantine model, that's kind of possible. You could have, for example, a Byzantine imperium whereby the existing ethnos and people groups existed in a one and many relationship, right? And the idea is to balance the one and the many such that there's no Greek ethno pride that makes you superior to another Orthodox Christian nation. You might have gifts as Greek people or as the Greeks that are unique to you, but you're still within a common framework of a universalized gospel. If you read Father St. Seraphim Rose, he says the exact same thing in Religion of the Revolution. But the entire ethos of modern and postmodern ideology and Marxist and all of that is essentially to manipulate everybody's ideas to where everything is a dialectical opposition of everything else. So if I identify as some niche, weird, fake minority group of I'm TRANZ, I'm a furry, I'm whatever, then I'm part of this group that gives me a group identity that replaces my actual historical group identity from my family and my wherever I'm from, my tradition, my ethnicity. That's now replaced by this bizarre, weird new cult of fan fiction, fantasy, LARPing, where I pretend that I'm a brony or a My Little Pony or a furry or whatever. Now, those are extreme examples, but that's the result of this whole dialectical process of setting everything in dialectical tensions. I've been saying this for so long. I don't know why it's so hard for people to see this, but this is the Enlightenment philosophy. This is the logical result of Enlightenment philosophy. In fact, if you read Father St. Seraphim Rose's book, Nihilism, Roots of the Modern Revolution, he's saying everything that I'm saying to you in that book. Everything I'm saying is just what's in that book. The only way for nations, and this is never going to exist in this life perfectly, right? But really the only way for nations to exist in a sort of harmony is like what you have in a Byzantine model. We're not ever going to go back to Byzantium. I'm not living in some LARPing medieval crusader tradcat idea. We're not going back to the Middle Ages. That's never happening. But for whatever forms come in the future, and we do have a power and ability to create new forms, whatever forms do come in the future, the wise patristic approach and the Byzantine model approach is that you do have a symphonia between church and state working together. The state is not an evil entity. It's not to be destroyed. It should have limitations. It should have limitations that pertain to the sphere of the body politic, to justice, criminal justice, etc. And then you have the church, which deals with the spiritual side, the soul of man. And that's the spiritual and the temporal, right? And it doesn't mean that because you have these two spheres, that somehow, oh, now you want to take over America in a political revolution and enforce Byzantium. This is the first thing every retard says when I say this. No, of course not. When the Roman Empire was conquered, the Christians didn't conquer it with swords. They conquered it through martyrdom. And you only have a Christian government when you have the majority of the people believing and agreeing in that position. And I'm not saying that, well, that makes it bottom up. It's not bottom up in the Christian scheme, because once the majority of the people want that, the history of the church has been coronation. The church has a quasi-sacramental service where they anoint the ruler, and that comes out of the Old Testament. So this whole idea that, oh no, but we worship voting and democracy, that's all an illusion. And we've all figured out that this voting bullshit is fake and gay, dude. I mean, in so many ways. Now, at the local level, it's probably still works to a degree. So your local sheriff and whatever, that's a lot more useful. But even that's kind of a psyop, because that just makes everybody think that, well, it's just like that with president. I'm going to vote Trump back in. We're going to get him in. It's like, dude, voting is fake. It doesn't even work. It's fake and gay. Why do you even think that your vote has anything to do with you? You don't know that dude 1,000 miles away in Washington. You don't know what lobby groups he's made deals with. The whole process is just retarded. You want to destroy our democracy. There is no democracy. Democracy is a lie. The very idea of democracy is literally to appeal to the basest desires for the largest number of people. So whatever oligarch has the biggest amount of money and war chest to fund the most widespread, most debased things will always win because it's just like an ad campaign. So things will never actually change until we begin to think outside of Enlightenment dialectics and the religion of democracy and the religion of the founding documents and the founding fathers. And by golly, when they drew up those documents, they sprinkled that powdered wig. They had that powdered wig dust and they patted that powdered wig and that magic dust. It fell down on the documents. And George Washington chopped down a cherry tree with magic cherry wood. And like Harry Potter's magic wand, he signed it in his own blood and blah, blah, blah. It's just like you guys have a Bible. It's like the way Protestants think of the inspiration of the Bible is like how they think the founding fathers, like they inspired the founding documents with their powdered wig dust. Margaret, we got eagles and guns and titties. Do you know how many memes and shit I've seen? I'm like, I try to filter out all that boomer slop, dude. I'm still seeing freaking guns and titties. It's like, American guns and titties. No, we just need a far right voice to scream on the internet. And if we just scream enough on how many times do you see these far right, quote unquote, goobers? They don't have any actual solution. They just become a cult of personality. And then the whole movement collapses. And then they turn into being Democrats and weirdos. Richard Spencer. Classic, same old thing you see with all the, we're gonna rise up. We're gonna rise up. Well, how are you gonna rise up when the solutions aren't even any solutions other than just following some weirdo on the internet? There's no weirdo you're gonna follow on the internet that's gonna change America's demographics because we're all already working within a controlled magic circle. And it's going to take generations in reality to get out of this mess. This is what we learned from Rothschild's biography. How did the Rothschilds go from being broke to being broke ass wiggers to running the world, dude? They thought generationally. And it took them 2 or 3 generations before they got into that level of power. Oh, so you're saying we got to be evil and do what the right? No, I'm not saying that, dummy. I'm saying that thinking generationally is the only way out of it. You can't solve the problems of a controlled, engineered dialectical system run by a bunch of plutocrats and oligarchs and deep state bureaucrats by voting in another goober who doesn't even have the power to change the system itself. It is the system that's the problem, right? Oh, you're a Marxist. So no, not a Marxist. Admitting that a Marxist has one good point doesn't make me a Marxist. Admitting that a Muslim made one good argument doesn't make me a Muslim. Admitting that Plato had one good argument doesn't make me a Platonist. So again, you got to get past all of this low level shit, dude. Russia has all the same Soviet bureaucratic holdover problems. It has the same classical liberal problems. It has the same problems of being tempted towards globalization and technocracy. Because we're hundreds of years into Western revolutionary ideas that have spread throughout the entire world. So it's probably going to take a couple hundred years or more to get out of it, to move back in the right direction. Anyway, so I will remind you guys, I think this classical liberal critique, and you'll see the only argument I was making in that video that was so controversial, if you remember, Jordan Peterson first kind of gained a lot of popularity, at least when he went mega viral, right, was when he was going off because they were trying to pass a law that was going to force him to call a trans person by the gender that they claim they have. Remember that? And Jordan Peterson, to his credit, hell no, I'll never do it. Fuck off. I told him to fuck off. The hell, go to hell. And it's like, yeah, but you can say that, but you have the same classical liberal ethos of those people. Until you question the presuppositions of classical liberalism. And by the way, again, to Jordan Peterson's credit, many, many, many years later, before he started getting, really sick again the last couple of years, he was beginning to say classical liberalism might actually be the problem. When I went and debated Tim Pool, Same debate I've been having for so many years. Tim Pool's, no, the solution is individual sovereignty, basic bitch, classical libertarianism. Dude, what century are you living in? Are you a 17-year-old? Peterson burned out, perhaps because he tried to defend Western ideals, namely classical liberalism. But this is a hopeless cause because, unfortunately, it's inherently regressive. Is this what you would say? Again, I think because America was half Christian, there was always this potentiality of it could go in the direction of being more Christian in a right way towards obviously Orthodox ideas ultimately, or it could go in the direction of more and more like satanic stuff. And unfortunately, America just progressively went more and more in the satanic direction and less Christian. So, in regard to Peterson himself, and I want everybody should keep praying for Jordan Peterson because I think if he's in bad health, a lot of times God sends us chastisements to bring us closer to Him. So we want to see Jordan Peterson eventually come around to Orthodoxy. He was so close, has been so close for so long, and even Jonathan Pajot says he thinks that this is chastisement, spiritual things that are intended ultimately to get Jordan Peterson to convert.